Release the Kraken!
Good afternoon, fellow game designers. Ron here at Lame Duck Studios, and we are going to continue on setting up our elf. So we did the skeleton in the last one, set up the orientation for the joints. Now it's time to make him come to life a little bit by attaching the skeleton to the skin. Before that, let's go ahead and make one minor tweak, which is on the ponytail hair cap. So what we're going to do is make this piece only for the hair cap. We don't want this actually part of the skeleton. So what I'm going to do is actually duplicate. So I'm going to select that, Control D, and make a duplicate of that. Go ahead and select the joint. I'm going to come over to the channel box here. You can see how it says head 3. That lets us know that because we have one head, 2, and then we have a third one. So if I actually hit the W here, and I move this off, you can see that there's a new joint chain there, right? So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to select this joint. I'm going to do Shift P. That's going to detach it from this chain here. So I'll select it. That's my head 3. I'm going to make a new layer. Create layer from selected. This is going to be the hair joints. I'll do a hair skeleton. Seems like a weird thing to have the hair with a skeleton, but that's what that's going to be. I can toggle that on and off. So I'm going to make sure I turn off the hair skeleton. I'm going to select the current one that's attached to my skeleton. I'm going to come down to this joint here. That's the first one in the actual hair. Do a Shift P. That's going to unparent. So we're going to keep the head joint. Okay, so that's head 2. And then this ponytail piece, I'll go ahead and delete that. But don't worry, we should have our ponytail actually on its own layer. Now the reason we're doing that is the ponytail is actually going to be attached. Actually, the entire hair piece is going to be attached to the model once we get inside of Unreal. We're going to do that over there. With that in mind, I'm going to select the hair piece. I'm going to create a new layer for that as well. So create layer from selected. Now double click on that. Let's make this hair. And did I already have a layer down here for that? Call that hair layer. I'll turn that off. Now we have our dude. He is bald. And if I were to poke the body layer, body disappears. The eyes didn't go. I should add those to the layer. Skeleton layer, skeleton disappears. And if I want the hair skeleton, that's there. And if I want just the hair, it's there. Okay. And just to add to the creep factor, I will add these eyeballs. I'll go ahead and select those. I will right click on the body layer and add selected objects. Okay. Turn the body skeleton back on. Make sure we save our work. Okay. So that all separates the hair from the body. Now it's time to bind the skeleton to our skin. Go ahead and select your root joint. That's this one down here. That's going to select the hierarchy. Now we only need the one joint selected, which is fine. Go ahead and do Shift, select the body. We're going to leave the eyes alone for now. We'll get those in just a second. We're going to go up to our tab here, change this to rigging. Go up to skin. Bind skin. We're going to get options box here. Let's see, we're going to have the joint hierarchy. Our bind method will be geodesic voxel. So what this does is it creates, think Minecraft. It basically fills the interior of your character with a bunch of Minecraft cubes. They're called voxels, but it fills them up with a bunch of voxels, and whatever the voxels touch creates the influence for the joint. It's not exactly how it works, but basically. It's pretty accurate. It's good for doing meshes that have holes in them, like we have an open mouth. If you were to cut this mesh up into pieces so you could change the arms and the legs off, geodesic voxel is really good for that. So down here for max influences, typically a range of 5 to 7 is good. I'm going to leave it at 5. Maintain max influences. This seems to be working in 2018, so I'm going to leave that on. And then I will hit bind skin. Hey, so the skin is bound. And if I were to grab my model, let's say I grab the root joint here and I move that, skin goes with it. Now this piece did not go with it, don't worry, that's going to be a separate thing. And while I'm at it, just because this might be in the way, go ahead and create a layer for it. So add a layer, create layer from selected, I'll call this the hoodie layer. That's this one up here. And I'll save that out. I'll turn the hoodie off for now. Hopefully I don't forget about it. And if we move any piece of our character, the skin should go with it. Now this is not how you want your character to move. Traditionally we just want to rotate the joints. So this is what we're going to do when it comes to skin weighting, is we want to make sure that when we bend the character, that things bend the correct way. So if I grab the torso, for example, and I rotate left and right, we want to make sure that that looks accurate. Now this is going to be a little messy just because the belt is part of the torso. So that's going to stretch. Up here, not too bad. I'm going to grab the shoulder, I'm going to roll the shoulder down, and you can see as I roll the shoulder down, we get up under here, this kind of tucks under. Not terrible, but we don't want that to be too extreme as it is. Now I'm going to go the other way, and you can see as I go this way, part of the chest kind of pops out. We don't want that. So we'll have to fix it. Let's check our other joints here. Bend the elbow. Close enough for government work. Let's grab the wrist. Bend the wrist. Pretty good. Rotate the wrist. Good, good. Let's check the fingers. So if I roll the thumb down, you can see the thumb has some control over the sleeve and some control over the palm. It should not, so we'll have to fix that. Fingers. If you bend this one, you can see this finger is controlling that finger right at the end there, if I move it. So we'll have to fix that. There's also some bunching on this knuckle. We'll have to fix that as well. Okay, a little bit of work for us, but not too bad. Okay, let's check the head. The head is almost always messed up. So neck, turn the neck. Down here's probably not that bad, but up top, we're getting some squish in the head here. Might be able to see it more if I grab this one. I'll bend the head back. Not too terrible, but you can see when I turn the head, it's got a bit of an S curve. Because part of the lower jaw is being controlled by this joint down here. Okay, so let's go through and fix some of this stuff. First thing first, we're going to select the skeleton. It doesn't matter where you select it. Select the skin. I'm going to go up to skin, come down to paint skin weights. You want the options box. It's going to open up this skin weight box here. This is going to show the entire skeleton. So we have our pelvis through the legs, through the toe. We'll have the hips. We have spine, all the things that connect to the spine, collarbone, so on and so forth. All the hand joints, neck joints, and then the other side of the body, and so on. So this is a list of all the joints, and they're color-coded to show you where they're influencing. And you can see here I have a color ramp. This is going to show where certain things are, as far as how much influence one joint has over the next, but we'll get into that just a second. If you don't see the color ramp, you can scroll down. There are two scroll windows here. This first one is for this box. This outer one here is for the big box. Just be aware of that. I almost always try to scroll up and get stuck here. And I go, ah. I'm going to scroll down. Under gradient, you have the option to use the color ramp. If you don't like the color ramp, you can use black and white. Just uncheck it. Personally, I think black and white is just easier, but sometimes you can't see exactly. You can see right here where it fades into gray, but it's almost black. Sometimes you can't quite tell, so using the color ramp, it'll show that that kind of goes into blue. And down here, blue to black is where it has no influence. All the way up to red to white is a lot of influence. So that's how this works. Alright. And if you don't like seeing the wireframe on your model, you can go up to do where it says selection highlights. So go to show, come all the way down to selection highlight, and uncheck that, and it won't be, the wireframe won't be there anymore. Okay, I'm going to keep mine on just because it's easier to model, or easier to do this. But if you have if it's really dense, it can be hard to see. So the joint that I want is my collarbone and shoulder joint for the left arm. So I'm going to scroll around here to look for that. So left collar is here. You can see the brighter color is the stronger influence. The darker color is less influence. So our shoulder should have almost no control over the elbow, right? So that should be dark over here, which it is. It might have a little bit of control over here, but most of it should be right around here. The shoulder itself is controlling here. It should control most of the arm upper. It doesn't need to have a lot of control down here on the forearm, so we can kind of take some of that away. But the part that I'm looking at right here is this area. So I'm going to bend the arm, and the easiest way to see what's going on is if you bend it. So I'm going to go ahead and bend this upward. And you can see when I bend upward, it pulls this part of the mesh out. So I'm going to grab that, grab the mesh, I'll open the options again. And what I want to do is give some of the control under here to a different bone. So the bone that should probably have this would be this one or this one, because these are closer to here than, say, like this one is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to this joint. So I'm going to select up. And you can see how I'm trying to scroll up, but I can't because I'm in this box, but this is the one that needs to scroll. I do that all the time, just check it. I'm going to go through, I want to find the collarbone, so I'll grab that. Come down. Now there are a bunch of tools here, try not to get too confused. Painting lets you paint. Select lets you select pieces. Paint select lets you click and drag to select vertices. But we'll get into that. Let's see, but we want to be down here under selected geometry, where it says paint options. I'm going to choose add. So what add does is it takes the current value that's there and it adds more to it. The total value is 1. The total empty value is 0. So it's a scalar from 0 to 1. Opacity controls how solid your paint stroke is. I usually just leave this all the way to 1 and use the value change down here, because the value is the one that's going to matter the most. I'm going to set this to a 0.1. So what this is going to do is every time I click and drag, it's going to add 10% of control to the vertices that I'm painting on. And you'll see that here. So set that to 0.1, I'll have that as add. And I'll go ahead and I'll just kind of click and drag. And as I do, you will see some of the mesh start to bend more toward this joint here. See that? And then down here, this part is closer to this joint. So I'm going to go over, and this is my spine 2. So I'm going to come down to spine 2. And I'm going to paint along this area so that spine 2 controls this under part of the arm. See that? Now the higher the influence, the more control it's going to have. So if I paint this really sharp, you can see that's going to be very stiff. So if I move the arm, that's going to be an area that doesn't hardly bend at all. See that part staying? And what you want to do is go through and check what's bending and what's not. So I'm going to go ahead and bend this some more. Select the mesh. If you want to smooth an area, you can hold down the shift key. You can see how I have a little A on my cursor. And now I have an SM, that's for smooth. That'll help average the control between the nearest joints. I'm going to go up to the middle of the spine here. This is spine 3. This is spine 3. And actually, I don't want spine 3. I want the collarbone. So I'll go down to the collarbone. I'll give the collarbone some more control over this area here. So I'll just paint that in. Alright, so let's go ahead and bend it and see what happens. It's a little too solid. You can see some parts of it are not quite bending. Just going to smooth some of this out. You can see here where it kind of collapsed in. So this I'll give to spine 1. Spine 2. Let's go down to spine 3, or up to spine 3. Whoops, didn't mean to zoom in that close. A little bit better. It's still getting some pull out here, but I'm going to fix that off camera. Let's go down to the leg. This one's going to be pretty fun. So let's move the leg up. I'm going to rotate it forward, and you can see as I rotate the leg forward, right here in the hip, how it gets squished. So that's not natural. So what we have to do is give some of this mesh control for the pelvis and the lower spine joint here. Down here on the butt, you can see how the belt's stretched all the way down. So what we're going to do is give the belt almost 100% to this spine joint, and then we'll have the butt on the hip. So let's do that. Select the body, select the skeleton. We'll go back in. I'm going to go down to the pelvis joint. Pelvis. Keep this on add. I'm going to do 10%. I'm going to very gradually add more influence along here. You can see how it's starting to flatten out. It's not squishing as much. Down here, I'm getting a lot of stretching. You can see the wires bending here, or the edge loops bending. So I'm going to go up to spine 1. So the hip joint, or the pelvis joint back here, is a bit away from the spine joint. So I'm going to go all the way down to spine 1. I'm going to give this part of the belt to spine 1. gonna hit Q so I can see what's going on. Okay, so I gotta get this edge loop up there as well. How's that doing? Yeah. So spine 1. Down here I'm doing a smooth by holding down the shift key. Hit Q to get out of that. I'll select the hip and I will rotate to see how it changes. So the belt isn't moving as much, which is good. Again, this would move a lot less if we made the belt as a separate piece, but it is part of the body, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to select the hip, select the body here. I'm going to select the skin weights. I'm going to change my mode here, so I'm in painting mode. I'm going to go over to paint selection, choose add. Now this is a different add than this because this is a selection add. So paint select, add, and you can see now we have vertices. And now as I paint, it's going to select those vertices. So I'm getting the vertices around the belt area. You can change your brush size by holding down the B key. So if you hold down B and drag, you can change your brush size. Now you might see that I'm only doing half, and the reason is I can mirror the weights over, but if you want to do the whole thing, you're welcome to do the whole thing. Okay, so with that selection, I'm going to go to paint. And you can see when I go to paint, instead of being able to paint on the model, it's showing the vertices. Because we have those selected, I'm going to go down. I'm going to change my value to 1. I'm going to do flood. So what flood is going to do is it's going to give whatever this value is, 100% to this. I'm going to hit replace on that. And that's going to give all of that to spine 1, which is what I gave it to. So now if I click out, that belt won't move. Now you might have, because of how solid it is, you're going to have this tearing, which again is a reason why you would want to have the belt as a separate piece. But it's alright, we can go in and do some adjustments. Like under here, you can see how we have stretching instead of tearing. And under here we have tearing. So what we can do is go under the butt here and give a little bit more control on the underside of the belt here. So I'll select that, shift select the skin, open up that, make sure we're in paint. I'm going to come down to the painting option. I'm going to change my value to 0.1, go to add, and down to my spine 1. So the next part that should have some control would probably be the hip and the pelvis. So I'm going to go up to the left hip. And you can see how the left hip has almost no control over here because that's black. So we're going to give a little bit of control by painting under here. Oops, my value is too high. Make sure I get my lower value in there. Adjust my brush size a little bit. Use shift to smooth. And as you're painting, be aware that you're not painting the face, you're painting the vertex. So if I paint and click here, you want to make sure you're hitting the vertex, not the face. So that's too much control there. I'll give some of that down to the pelvis. See how that bends. So good enough under the butt. We're not really going to be that close to his butt, but it should be from far enough away where it looks okay. You can see part of the chest ended up moving. That's unnatural up there. What that means is the hip has control over this upper chest area, which it should not have. So what I'm going to do is go back in, grab that hip joint, and I'm going to take my value over here. I'm going to go to replace, set it down to 0. So what replace is going to do is going to take the current value and change it. So in this case, I am zeroing anything above the hip, because the hip should not have anything up there. So grab my brush and I'll just paint these off. Again, I'm painting the vertex. You can see as I paint on the face, nothing happens. But as I hit the vertex, it paints it off. And this is really all skin weighting is. You're telling what joint, what area to control. So I'm saying hip, you should not control the chest. You two should not be friends. And it goes, okay. Maya's gotten pretty good at figuring out what to assign the weights to automatically. But some areas you still have to go in and fix by hand. So. Okay, let's see how it bends the other way. Smooth that just a little bit. Be aware that when you go back in, you want to make sure that you are selecting the correct joint, just in case you click something different. And in here I'm just smoothing. It's actually very rare to have a good flex on the groin. It actually doesn't look terrible. But it is passable. So if you're throwing a kick or something. Okay. I'll check the knee. Make sure the knee bends. Pretty good. No real gripes about that. Foot bends. And if I grab the ball of the foot, the toe bends. Nothing to complain about here. It does pull a little bit on the heel. Just a little bit down here. But the bottom of the sole is kind of rubbery, so it would flex a little bit. So it's not a big enough of a deal for me to go and spend, an hour or two trying to fix it. If I were doing this for a production, then yeah, I would take the time. Okay, so this is the lower body and the hip. I'm going to stop the video here, and the next one will take care of the head and neck area, and then we'll do the hand. The hand's going to take the longest. So save what you have. Make sure you check, of course, the rotation of your hips and your other joints. Go through, and then we will also mirror everything across in the next video. Okay, and I will see you then. Hey guys, thanks for checking out my channel. Misty and I both thank you. If you've enjoyed the video you just watched, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you have any comments or suggestions for future videos, make sure you leave them down in the comments. I upload new content every Sunday, and I release content every Wednesday. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, I do have a Patreon. Get content early. I also have official merch, Lame Duck Studio merch. It does exist. They do exist. So make sure you stick around for anything new, and I will see you next time.